A long time ago, in a peaceful valley called Orofo, there was a busy little town named Umudiba. It was full of life, full of color, and full of stories. The sun always rose early in Umudiba, shining bright over the brown roofs and red dirt roads. Every morning, the town woke up with many sounds: roosters crowing, women sweeping their compounds with long brooms, and sellers shouting things like, "Hot puff puff here!" or "Sweet plantain for cheap." The smell of food filled the air: fresh palm oil, fried akara, grilled fish, and yam porridge cooking on firewood stoves. Children ran up and down the narrow paths, laughing, chasing goats, and kicking tins like footballs. Old men sat under big trees playing checkers, talking about weather, harvest, or who got married last week. Umudiba was a town where people greeted each other with warm smiles. The market was always full of voices, and everyone seemed to know everyone. People helped each other, people listened. It was a place that felt like family, and in a big yellow house at the top of the hill, near the mango grove, lived a young woman named Camilla. Camilla was the daughter of Chief Toby and Mama Inae. Her family was rich and respected. They owned many palm oil farms and gave food to widows and orphans. But Camilla was not just a rich girl. She was smart, strong, and kind. She had finished school in the big city and came back to help her father run the family oil company. At just 25 years old, she was already a director. She wore simple clothes, but her walk was proud. Her words were soft, but people listened. But what Camilla loved most was her home. She was married to a calm and caring man named Nimi, a banker who made her laugh every day. They had 2 beautiful children: Zubair, a boy full of energy who was 2 years old, and Amira, a baby girl with big bright eyes who had just learned how to clap. Everyone said Camilla had the perfect life. A good job, a loving husband, 2 healthy children, a big house, joy. But sometimes life changes without warning, and on one quiet afternoon everything changed for Camilla. It was a Wednesday afternoon in Umudiba, and the sky looked tired. The kind of sky that carried soft clouds and warm silence. Inside a tall office building near the edge of town, Camilla sat behind her glass desk, flipping through reports. Her mind was full of numbers, signatures, and client emails. The air smelled of fresh paper, coffee, and the lemon-scented cleaner the janitor used every morning. Her office was large, bright, and spotless. She had worked hard for this space, but that day was not an ordinary day. Her phone buzzed. A message blinked on the screen. "Emergency meeting at 3:30 p.m. All directors must attend." Camilla's heart sank. She looked at the time. It was her turn to pick up her children, Zubair and Amira, from daycare. She stood up and stared out of the window. The meeting was with investors from Abaloko, a foreign firm trying to buy part of her father's company. It was important, but her children were more important. She picked up her phone and dialed her husband. "Nimi, please. I need your help." "What's wrong?" he asked, his voice soft as usual. "A meeting just came up. I have to be in the boardroom in 30 minutes. Can you pick up the kids today?" "Camilla, it's your turn. I told my branch manager I'd meet him this evening. I have plans." Camilla's heart squeezed. "Please, love, just this once. I'll make it up to you, I promise." There was a pause. "All right," he sighed. "But you owe me that ogbono soup with snail." Camilla smiled. "Done." "Thank you." After the call, Camilla returned to her desk, her mind still on her babies, but duty called. The meeting lasted hours. By the time it ended, the sun was already falling low in the sky. She packed her things, said goodbye to her colleagues, and headed to the parking lot. Her heart felt light as she thought of home, little Amira clapping her hands when she saw her, Zubair running to hug her legs, Nimi waiting with that tired but loving smile. She couldn't wait. But fate had its own plan that evening. As Camilla drove through the dusty roads of Umudiba, a strange breeze brushed her face. Something felt off, but she shook it off. Maybe it was just the heat. When she reached the gate of their compound, it was open. That was normal. What wasn't normal was the silence. She stepped inside. No sounds, no voices, no baby laughter, no music, no footsteps. The house felt too quiet. Camila walked into the living room, set her bag on the chair, and called out, "Zubair! Amira! Mama is home!" Nothing. She peeked into the kitchen. It was empty. She looked at the play area, toys untouched. Her heart started to pound. She walked outside to call the housekeeper. "Mama Ijoma, Mama Ijoma, has Nimi returned with the children?" The old woman walked out slowly from the back where she was washing clothes. "No, madam, I haven't seen them today." Camila blinked. "You're sure?" "Yes, madam. Since morning, I've been here. No one came in." Camila rushed back inside. He called Nimi's number. It rang. No answer. She tried again, and again. Still nothing. Her stomach tightened. Her palms became sweaty. She walked in circles through the living room, biting her lip, trying to stay calm. Maybe they stopped for ice cream, she whispered to herself, forcing a smile. Maybe Zubair begged for suya again. She turned on the TV, sat on the couch, and waited. She waited for laughter, for footsteps, for a car engine pulling into the yard, but none came. By 7 p.m., Camila stood up from the couch. The food on the stove was untouched. The evening air was cooler now, but her heart felt hot with worry. She dialed Mama Coco, her mother-in-law. "Mama, is Nimi there with the kids?" "No. Oh, is he not back yet? He picked them from school today. I had work, but they're not home." "Hey, have you called him?" "Many times. He's not answering." "Maybe he stopped at your parents' place." "Call them." Camila did, but Chief Toby and Mama Ine hadn't seen him either. Now her voice began to shake. "Amira must be hungry. The milk I packed will be finished by now," she whispered to herself, pacing. She called Nimi's friends. Nobody had seen him. She called her own colleagues. Nothing. Her voice became dry. Her fingers trembled. The time was now 9:15 p.m. Camila grabbed her car keys. Her heart beat faster than a drum. She drove through every corner of their estate, eyes wide, scanning the roads. She passed the children's school. It was dark and closed. She passed their favorite shawarma stand, empty. She stopped at the ice cream shop, closed. She drove to the roadside suya spot. The seller shook his head. No one had seen them. By 11 p.m., Camila was still driving. Her tears had soaked her scarf. Her voice had gone hoarse from calling her husband's name out loud, even though she knew he could not hear her. She felt like the walls of the night were closing in. The streets were almost empty. Even the crickets were quiet. She finally turned around and drove back home, her eyes red and swollen. When she entered the house, the silence screamed louder than before. There was no Zubair asking for juice, no Amira reaching out her arms, no Nimi opening the fridge, humming an old love song. She walked to the middle of the living room. She looked at the family photos on the wall, and then she broke. Camila dropped to the floor like a branch snapped. From its tree, her sobs filled the air, heavy, raw, painful. "Where are you?" she cried. "What happened to you? Please, come home." Her body shook as she lay on the cold floor, not caring if the night swallowed her whole. Her thoughts were spinning. Were they safe? Had they eaten anything since afternoon? Was Amira crying? Was Zubair scared? She clutched her phone tightly and, with shaking fingers, dialed her father's number. The moment he picked up, she broke down. "Papa, Papa, they're not home," she cried through heavy sobs. "Nimi picked the children this afternoon. I waited, I searched, I called. They're gone." There was silence on the line, and then her father's firm but worried voice came through. "What? Since afternoon? Camila, this is midnight already. Where could they be?" "I don't know, Papa. This isn't like Nimi. He never stays out late. He's always home before sunset. I'm scared." Her father, Chief Toby, tried to remain calm, though his chest was tightening with fear too. My princess, listen to me. They will be okay. I will make some calls, I promise. By morning we will find them. Just hold on. His words were soft, but even Camilla could hear the fear behind them. She nodded, even though he couldn't see her, and ended the call. But her body wouldn't calm down. Her heart beat wildly, like a drum in a storm. Her stomach twisted, and her mouth was dry. The air in her home suddenly felt heavy. Too heavy. She went back to the gate. She opened it, looked out into the dark. Nothing. She walked back in. She stared at the clock. It was now 12:31 a.m. Every second felt like a knife. Every passing minute a scream inside her chest. The warm house, that once echoed with laughter, was now hollow like a broken shell. She paced, she cried, she knelt on the rug and prayed, whispering to every spirit she could think of. Please bring them back to me. Please let them be okay. But there was no answer. The night was the longest she had ever known. She kept going to the window, peeking through the curtains. She kept walking to the door, hoping she would hear a knock, a voice, a car horn. But each time, silence. Finally, just before dawn, her body gave up. She curled up on the couch, her eyes red and swollen, her face soaked with tears, and slowly she fell asleep. A knock, then another, and then a voice. "Madam, madam." Camilla opened her eyes. For one small second, she forgot everything. She sat up, expecting to see Zubair bouncing toward her, expecting to hear Nimi calling her name. But the voice outside the door wasn't her husband's. It was the housekeeper, Mama Ijeoma. "Madam," the woman said again, "police are at the gate." "They say they want to see you." Camilla sat frozen. The words didn't register. "Police? Yes, Ma, 2 officers." Camilla stood up slowly, her head spinning. She had not eaten, not slept well, and her legs felt weak. She walked toward the front door, each step heavier than the last. 2 men in dark uniforms stood waiting. "Good morning, Ma," one of them said. "Are you Miss Camilla?" "Yes," Camilla said, her voice low and confused. "Is something wrong?" The officer looked at his partner, then back at her. "Ma, I am very sorry to say this, but there was an accident yesterday. It happened along the East Bridge. There were some casualties. We believe your husband and children may have been involved." It felt like the world collapsed beneath her. Camilla's knees buckled and she dropped to the floor. No, that can't be true. Not my Nimi, not my babies." The officers moved closer, trying to help her sit up, but she shook them off. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice trembling. Maybe there's a mistake. Maybe it was someone." "It's me," the other officer spoke gently. "We found a wallet and ID. That's why we need you to come with us to the city mortuary to identify the bodies." Camilla stared blankly. She looked down at her hands. They were trembling like leaves. "This is a nightmare," she whispered. "I must be dreaming." She pinched her arm. It hurt. It was real. A few minutes later, Camilla changed into a wrapper and blouse. Her scarf was tied loosely. Her hands shook as she buttoned her blouse. Her face was pale, her eyes lifeless. Her parents arrived just as she stepped into the police car. Her mother was wailing. Her father's eyes were glassy, but his lips pressed tight. He was trying to be strong. For her. They all drove in silence. No one dared speak a word. The city morgue stood like a cold giant in the middle of a quiet compound. The building was grey and the air smelled of bleach, medicine and sorrow. The walls felt thick with grief. Camilla walked in slowly, her heart thudding like thunder. A nurse led her down the hallway. "They're in room 4, she whispered, as if the walls could hear. Camilla's feet dragged. Every step felt like it took a lifetime. When they opened the door, her breath caught in her throat. There, on 3 metal trays, lay her world. Nimi, Zubair, Amira, still, cold, gone. Her scream broke the silence like glass. She fell to the floor, rolling, crying, clawing at her chest. No, please, wake up, somebody wake me up." Her mother rushed in behind her and dropped beside her, crying loudly. Her father stood in the doorway, shaking his head, his mouth open, but no words coming out. The nurse closed the door gently and gave them space. Camilla crawled toward the tiny form of Amira, wrapped in white cloth. She reached out a shaking hand and touched her daughter's tiny fingers, cold, lifeless. "My baby, my sweet girl, you didn't even turn one." She looked at Zubair's peaceful face. "You promised to be my helper. You said you would be strong for your sister." Then her eyes moved to Nimi, her partner, her friend, the man who held her hand during labor, the man who told bedtime stories, the man who said, "I'll be right back." But now, he would never. "Come back!" Camilla bent over him and cried into his chest. "How do I live now?" she whispered. "How do I breathe in a world where you and our babies don't exist?" The room was filled with sobs and silence and death. After a long time, her father gently pulled her away. They walked out together, the morning sun shining too brightly for such a dark moment. People watched them as they passed, but no one said a word. Camilla didn't speak, she didn't blink. She didn't breathe deeply. Her soul had been ripped apart, and now she was just empty. They drove back to Umudiba, and no one said a word. Back at her house, the air felt even heavier than before. The gate creaked open, the curtains hung still. Not even the birds sang. The home that used to be full of joy and children's laughter was now a quiet, empty shell. But the day was not done with grief. That evening, Nimi's parents arrived. His mother, Mama Zira, was crying loudly as she walked into the compound. Her wrapper was tied carelessly, her eyes red from crying. "You've killed my son," she shouted the moment she saw Camilla sitting on the floor. Camilla looked up confused, her eyes already swollen from tears. "You witch! I told him not to marry into your family, but he did not listen. And now see what has happened. My son and my grandchildren are gone." Camilla's father stepped forward quickly. "Zira, please, this is not the time for this. We are all mourning. This pain belongs to all of us." But Mama Zira was not done. "Don't tell me to calm down. I lost my only son, my grandchildren, and she's sitting there like nothing happened. It's her fault. Her bad luck brought this upon them." At that moment, Mama Ine stood up, her face fierce like a lioness protecting her cub. "How dare you speak to my daughter like that? Do you think she's not grieving? She lost her entire world." The two mothers screamed at each other. Voices rose, blames were thrown, anger danced with grief. And Camilla, she just sat there, still, silent. Her eyes stared into nothing. Her ears heard the shouts, but her soul was far away. She wasn't in her living room. She was still in the morgue, still staring at the lifeless faces of her children, still hoping it was all a dream. Suddenly she stood up. Without a word, she walked past everyone, past the arguing parents, past the shaking heads. She opened the gate and walked into the night. The air was cool. The sky had turned dark. The moon was hidden behind thick clouds. Camilla walked barefoot on the dirt path. She didn't know where she was going. She didn't care. Tears streamed down her face again. Her chest felt like it had a stone inside. She kept walking, her feet finding their way through places she didn't recognize. "What am I living for?" she whispered. "What is left for me now?" Her steps took her far from home, past the familiar roads, into a strange path she had never noticed before. It was quiet, no cars, no noise, just the sound of her breath and the wind. And then she heard it, a tiny, soft cry, like a child. Camilla stopped. She turned her head. There, by the edge of the road, in a patch of grass, was a small baby goat. Its fur was white and soft, its legs thin and shaky. It was bleating gently, looking around like it was lost. Camilla froze. Something about the sound pulled at her soul. She walked toward the goat slowly. It didn't run. It just looked at her with wide, scared eyes. She knelt beside it. "Are you alone too?" she whispered. The goat bleated again, and in that moment something strange happened inside Camilla. It was like the pain in her chest eased just a little. Her arms reached out, and she gently lifted the goat into her arms. She held it close. The small creature didn't fight. It rested its head on her chest, its body warm and soft. Camilla began to cry again, but this time not from panic, from something else, something softer, something that felt like a tiny bit of peace. "My baby," she said. "My sweet baby. I'm so sorry." She stroked its fur gently, her hands moving like a mother's hands. She carried the goat back, home in her arms like a newborn. By the time she returned, the house was quiet again. Her in-laws had left. Her parents sat in the living room, worried and silent. They looked up in shock when they saw her carrying the goat. Camilla didn't explain. She just walked straight to her bedroom, shut the door softly, and laid the goat in Amira's empty crib. She smiled. She hummed a soft lullaby, the same one she used to sing to her daughter before bed. "You must be hungry," she whispered to the goat. "I'm so sorry for being late." She picked up Amira's old feeding bottle and filled it with warm pap. She wrapped the goat in one of Amira's old blankets. Her movements were gentle, loving. To her, this wasn't a goat. It was her child. Outside her room, Camilla's parents stood by the door, frozen with worry. "Did you see that?" Mama Inaya whispered. "Yes," Chief Toby said. She thinks it's the baby." "Should we go inside?" "No, let's give her some time." They sat by her door all night, listening, waiting, hoping. The next morning, Camilla came out of her room. Her face was calm, too calm. She was humming a strange song none of them had ever heard before. She went into the kitchen, took Amira's bottle, and began preparing baby food. Her parents followed her, too afraid to speak. When she finished, she smiled at them. "Good morning, Mama. Good morning, Papa." "Camilla," her father began, "are you feeling all right?" "I've never felt better," she replied. She turned and walked back to her room. Her parents looked at each other, their eyes full of fear. Camilla locked her door. Inside, she lifted the goat and cradled it like a baby. She spoke softly to it, fed it from the bottle and rocked it gently. The goat, confused but quiet, rested in her arms. From that day on, Camilla stayed in her room. She only came out to take food and water and sometimes to pick up baby clothes or bottles. Her parents stayed in the house, worried sick. They didn't know what to do. But deep inside, they both knew something was very, very wrong. One day, in the kitchen, Camilla opened the cupboard, took out Amira's feeding bottle and prepared pap. Her movements were gentle and careful. She poured warm water, stirred slowly, and sang a lullaby softly under her breath. Her parents just watched, frozen, confused, scared. Then they saw it. Camilla carried the baby goat into the kitchen, wrapped in one of Amira's soft pink blankets. She held it in her arms like a newborn. The goat's small eyes blinked sleepily. Camilla kissed the goat's forehead, then smiled proudly. "Look at her, Mama. Isn't she beautiful?" Her mother's hand flew to her chest. "Camilla, what is this?" "It's Amira," Camilla said with joy. "I thought I lost her forever, but the spirits brought her back to me." "No, my child, that is a goat. No, she's my baby, my daughter. I found her crying in the woods, alone, cold, hungry, just like she was in that horrible morgue. But I saved her. Camilla, your real daughter is gone. Don't say that!" Camilla screamed suddenly, eyes wide and sharp. "Don't you dare take her from me again!" She turned, clutching the goat tightly, and ran upstairs to her room, locking the door behind her. "Oh no! Papa! There's fire on the mountain!" Mama Ine cried. "This is no longer normal." "She's breaking apart," Chief Toby said quietly, his voice dry. We have to do something before we lose her forever." Days passed. Camila stayed in her room. She only came out for food and water, then disappeared again, carrying the goat in her arms like a baby. Her parents sat by her door, whispering, praying, worrying. Every time they tried to talk to her, she smiled like everything was fine, then disappeared again. But one afternoon, something happened. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Then came a soft sound. Suckling. Then a whisper. Then silence. Chief Toby couldn't take it anymore. "I'm going in," he said. They broke the door. What they saw inside made them freeze. Camila sat on her bed, her blouse opened slightly. She was breastfeeding the goat, like a mother feeding her newborn. The goat's tiny mouth was at her chest. Camila looked up and smiled. "Shh, you'll wake her," she whispered, gently stroking the goat's head. She just fell asleep. Her parents couldn't move, couldn't breathe. This wasn't their daughter. This was a stranger wearing her face. That evening, they bundled Camila into the car and rushed her to Malambe Medical Center, the only mental health hospital in the region. A team of nurses and doctors met them at the entrance. Camila looked calm, even happy. She didn't fight. She kept humming softly and cradling the goat. The doctors took her inside. They laid her on a soft bed. They asked questions, and for the first time, Camila didn't answer. She stared at the ceiling and whispered lullabies. Later that night, the family met with the head psychologist, Dr. Ayotunde. He was kind, gentle, firm. "Your daughter is suffering from extreme emotional shock," he explained. "She is trapped in the stage of denial. It's one of the deepest parts of grief." "Is she going to be okay?" Chief Toby asked. "She can recover, but it won't be quick. It will take therapy, medication, time, and love. Lots of love." Mama Inai wept into her husband's arms. "Please save our daughter. We already lost her husband, her children. We can't lose her too." "We'll do our best," Dr. Ayotunde said. "But healing is not a straight road. There will be many turns." Camila stayed in the hospital. For weeks, sometimes she smiled, sometimes she cried. Some days she screamed in the middle of the night. Other days she would sit quietly, staring at nothing for hours. The doctors gave her gentle medicine to help her sleep. The goat was taken to a shelter, but Camila didn't even ask about it anymore. Something inside her was beginning to understand. After some time, Camila started going to therapy. At first, she said nothing. She sat on the couch and stared at the window. Then one day, she cried, long, deep, painful sobs that shook her whole body. The next day, she spoke. "I don't remember the accident, but I remember the silence afterward. It was like the world forgot to breathe." The therapist listened patiently, and every week Camila spoke a little more. She talked about Nimi, about Zubair, about Amira. She remembered their laughter, their smells, their little hands. She remembered the last time she held them. She remembered the goat, and how, for a short while, it filled a hole so deep she couldn't face it alone. 2 months later, Camila came home. Still fragile, still quiet, but she could look at the photos on the wall without fainting. She could walk into the children's room without breaking down, and sometimes, just sometimes, she smiled. 5 years later, Camila stood in the garden, her arms around 3 small children, a boy with curly hair, a girl with dimples, and a baby in her arms. Her new husband, Jabari, walked toward her with a basket of mangoes. "There, ready for juice," he said with a grin. Camila smiled, but not the fake smile, a real one, soft, healing, whole. She still kept pictures of Nimi, Zubair, and Amira in a wooden box by her bed. She still visited their graves every year on their birthday. She still lit a candle and sang their favorite songs. But she had forgiven herself. She had learned to breathe again. Camila now worked as a counselor in Umudiba's community center. She told her story to other grieving women, to young widows, to mothers who lost children, to daughters trying to find peace. And whenever someone asked, "How did you survive?" she would smile gently and say, "I didn't, not the old me. She died." But from her pain, something new was born. A woman who carries grief in one hand and hope in the other. Grief wears many faces. Sometimes it hides in silence. Sometimes it screams in madness. Sometimes it wears a goat's fur. This story is not about loss. It is about what comes after healing, love, and the courage to begin again. Check on your loved ones, hold them tightly, and protect your mind as fiercely as your body, because some wounds are invisible, but they are still real. Please subscribe, like, and share this story with someone who needs hope today. Until next time, I'll bring you another tale from the heart of the motherland.